Let's make a deal, the Trump administration says to Ghislaine Maxwell, having some of their top DOJ officials meeting with her in an unprecedented move to presumably come up with some type of a deal to keep her quiet about the Epstein files. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on Legal AF. If you like this content, hit that subscribe button so you can be alerted next time we drop more episodes. Brian, why don't you tell us about a show from the 1960s called Let's Make a Deal?
Yeah, okay. Let's make a deal. 60s, 70s, Monty Hall. It was famous. Let's make a deal. And he would go in the audience try to make a deal with people. Okay. But what we're talking here is the real world. And you said a minute ago, some officials from the Trump administration. No, Todd Blanche, the number 2 guy in the Department of Justice himself, flew down to Florida where Ms. Maxwell is in prison for 20 years, meaning under the federal system, she won't be eligible until she served 80%, or I believe 16 of her 20 years. And then she's eligible for parole or release. So that's a long time. She's been in prison for a couple of years.
By the way, another Trump lapdog, another personal attorney of his, right? I like keeping track of all the different.
Yes. Yeah. His primary lawyer in that criminal trial that he had in New York City that went swimmingly well for him. So your reward for losing is to become the number 2 guy in the Department of Justice or become a Third Circuit Court of Appeals judge for life if you're Emil Bovee. But I digress. So this guy gets on a plane with apparently Pam Bondi herself, I think, and they head down to Florida to interview her, and a 2-day interview, which is just concluded, to try to find out what's going on. Now, meanwhile, against this backdrop, Maxwell has an appeal pending of her conviction. And the Trump administration is actively currently, those are both very important words, actively currently opposing the appeal. Now, they can make deals. They can make all kinds of deals. And here's where I think we have to be a little, what would be the word? Pensive?
Suspicious?
Thoughtful?
Suspicious. Skeptical. Yeah.
Right. Now, if you're going down there on behalf of your personal client, Donald Trump, and you're interviewing this convicted felon, and you're talking to her, do you want her to come completely clean or just a little clean? Shant?
You want her to give the version of the story that helps your client, Donald Trump, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
well,
that version.
But Brian, Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer said she will cooperate and she will testify truthfully or answer questions truthfully. Well, is there any reason to doubt her?
Well, there's a process pre-prosecution called Queen for a Day, where you bring the person in who may or may not be charged, who's a potential target, and you say, look, anything and everything you say here is protected, but if you lie, we're going to come after you. And they're basically trying to find out what's going to be said truthfully. And they let people know that if you lie, that's a felony in and of itself. When you go and meet with Ms. Maxwell, I think the narrative you want is something along the lines of Jeffrey Epstein was a very bad person. He did very bad things. He had a lot of people, a lot of high-profile people that were involved in this. He got his money from X, Y, or Z. There's been talk about him being an agent. There's been talk about him blackmailing people, having videos. And what you want her to say is, yeah, all that's true, but Donald Trump, that name doesn't ring a bell. I've heard that name before, but I don't know who Donald Trump is. I've never seen Donald Trump. Isn't that basically what you're looking for?
Or maybe more than that. Oh yeah, I know Donald Trump. He's a great man and a very respectable father. That's what they want her to say. I think that's right. That is likely the angle that they're looking for here. I mean, why else would they be meeting with her? A part of it is, look, it's
when you say, by the way, when you say respectable father, wasn't he on Howard Stern once commenting that his own daughter was hot?
Oh my God. But really, why else would they be doing this? I mean, look, part of it is political theater that, they're trying to get to the bottom of it because Trump made promises and he seems to be breaking those promises. And you know who's most upset about that? Not the left, not his opponents, the right, his own base, the far right that bought that bullshit is very upset with him. They feel like they've been betrayed. And they said, this isn't what we voted for. This guy said he's going to drain the swamp. Where's the Epstein list? And so not only is he breaking his promise, it's coming back to haunt him because the implication seems to be that he's in the list. He's on the list. He's
I'm not a big conspiracy theory person. I mean, I think the facts are the facts, right?
Sure.
And I have always subscribed to a theory called Occam's razor, which is the most logical explanation, is probably the correct one. But here, the Trump administration was asked by the far right to appoint a special prosecutor. That's been denied, right? There's a narrative that's come out of the Trump world that Trump was simply a friend. They cut off the friendship in 2005, 2006. He was barred from Mar-a-Lago at that point. There was no, ongoing relationship. Yes, they were friends. That's all well documented. You can't run from that. But, and I think we should cover, some of this other stuff in another episode about the drawings and about the alleged lewd art piece that he drew, but not now. That's the narrative anyways. They need her to shoehorn into that narrative. And I know one thing from the criminal justice system, which is if you're giving someone who's incarcerated and is facing another, 13 years in custody, an option of telling a story, and that's probably what it is, a little story, and getting out early or getting time shaved off or withdrawing, an opposition to an appeal, whatever the case may be, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
If you ask them to admit that pigs fly, certain felons will say, I've seen many pigs fly. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to also talk in our last couple of minutes here about another aspect of the same case, which came down simultaneous. And in your words, Shant, potential political theater. And that is the petition to unseal the grand jury transcript. So give us some background before I dive into the opinion here.
Sure. When the backlash I was talking about his own base losing their shit over Trump saying, forget about these Epstein files. When it got to a tipping point where he's like, oh crap, I can't make people forget about this by talking about we're putting real sugar back in Coke or whatever nonsense he was promoting around that time. He said, all right, you know what? I'm going to instruct Pam Bondi to go and get those records released. Right. And what happened? Did they get released right away? She went to court and tried to get them released.
No. So this was, in my mind, just more of the sideshow. And so an opinion came down very quickly from the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida. And in it, the judge writes, denies the petition. So they wanted the grand jury transcripts supposedly released. That's what they were doing. They were telling their base, we're going to go get this done. Look at us. Look how great we are. The judge writes, for the reasons set forth below, the 11th Circuit, that's the circuit there in the appellate circuit, the law does not permit this court to grant the government's request. Okay, and you ready for it? The court's hands are tied. Appoint the government concedes. Appoint the government concedes. Okay, so then if that isn't enough, I've got one more little quote in here where the court talks about the fact that there are the rules and the government's petition to unseal the grand jury transcripts is not based on any of the exceptions to the rules. So they went in there, Shant, knowing that this was a fail.
Yeah.
This was never going to happen.
A point that the government concedes, meaning the point being that the court's hands are tied, they can't release these. They knew that all along. The lawyers that went in to ask the court to give these records admitted to the court, they conceded that the court can't release these records. So it was all political
It's like going into
theater.
the court as a defense lawyer and saying, I know you're not going to do this, Your Honor, but Jeffrey Dahmer should be subject to early release. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. It is political theater. That's right. Exactly
And my
right.
final point on this is that a lot of what is going on, you mentioned the Mexican Coke, the using real cane sugar and Coke, that's a sideshow. It's to distract you. This whole nonsense about Tulsi Gabbard and records involving the Obama administration 9 years ago, sideshow. Going down to try to get grand jury transcripts released that they know weren't going to be released. Sideshow. It's placating people. Working with Ghislaine Maxwell is maybe not so much a sideshow, but it's what they're kind of prepping for to do everything they can to protect the president and not having a special prosecutor or investigators look into this. So I just find this so transparent. You get the last word, Shant.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's right. All of these are sideshows. All of these are distractions. And it's coming as the Trump MAGAverse is imploding on itself. All of it is kind of falling apart. Everything is falling apart in front of him. A lot of his loyalists are abandoning him. The polls aren't doing well. So this has all become, he has to do things to distract from that and make it seem like he's doing something productive that his base appreciates. And it's becoming more and more obvious that these things are transparent. His base is realizing, hey, we are smarter than you think we are. And I think it's a true thing. While I think we may have strong disagreements with people on the far right, I don't think they're dumb. I don't think they can be fooled by Trump much longer. I mean, people are starting to see the emperor has no clothes. And that's coming to light. And these are all problems and he can't make them go away. So this is an interesting story. We'll keep following this. Let's see what happens with Ghislaine Maxwell. Let's see if she even cuts the deal or it was just pure political theater. They went and met with her and nothing's going to come of it. So it's either that or some sweetheart deal that she's going to get for confirming that's right. Mr. Trump had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. So we'll see and we'll keep you updated. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep track of this stuff. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. We're two lawyers at Kabateck LLP. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. See you next time.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.